What is going on, movie fans, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm sharing with you all my movie review of the brand new action thriller directed by John Woo. We're talking about Silent Night. Now, if you're a fan of John Woo like myself, this is a pretty big deal because this is his return to American cinema in over 20 years. So the question is it worth the wait? Should you give it a watch? We'll be discussing that and much more in today's spoiler-free review. But first, I want to know in the comments if you are a fan of John Woo and if you were looking forward to checking out this movie. But more importantly, once you've seen it, let's talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, your thoughts on the direction, the story, the performances, the action beats in this film, what worked, what didn't work. And if you are a John Woo fan, let me know some of your favorite films of his in the comments below. So me personally, I am a fan. I'm a product of the 90s and I love action. So I've seen The Hard Boiled, I've seen The Hard Targets, I've seen The Broken Arrow, Face Off, and of course, my least favorite Mission Impossible film in the franchise, Mission Impossible 2. But I'm just a fan of his work. I like his approach to action. It is over-stylized at points, but it works within his narratives. I liked his use of slow motion. I love that he brought gun fu over to American action. So many great things to say about him. So to say I was excited about this film, yeah, that's an understatement. I was very excited, and here we are talking about it. And I want to start off by talking about the pros, and I want to talk a little bit about the story that we have at hand. It's pretty simple. It gets straight to the point, and for better or for worse, there's no twists, there's no turns, there's no crazy surprises or overcomplicated plots. It's just a simple story of revenge as a family man jumps into this underworld of crimes to avenge his young son's death on Christmas Eve. And all of this happens within an hour and 40 minutes, which, being an action fan, being a horror fan, I like my action and horror to be about an hour and a half, hour 40. So it tells this very simplistic story within that runtime, which I really appreciated. Now, talking a little bit about that action, which, again, John Woo, he's known for the action. And for the most part, he doesn't disappoint when it comes to that in this film. I liked how our main character isn't a ex-Marine. He isn't an active policeman. He doesn't have experience in hand-to-hand combat. He's just a regular dude trying to get revenge for his son's death. And it brings this kind of grittiness to the film, right? This kind of realistic approach. It's very grounded, right? I know everyone compares every action movie to John Wick. I won't say it's like anti-John Wick because it is some violent moments in this film, but it isn't over-stylized like some of the John Wicks. Like there isn't neon lights. There aren't samurai swords or people riding on motorcycles and doing backflips and jumping downstairs. It's a more realistic approach to the situation, which I really did appreciate. But focusing a little bit more on that action, it was interesting. I was entertained for the most part. I particularly liked the action beats with our protagonist taking on people in stairwells. There's some pretty solid chase sequences in this film, but unfortunately, no doves. Where were the doves, Woo? I was looking forward to seeing some doves, and we got none of them in this film. But kind of switching and talking about one of the gimmicks I would say about this film is there's little to no dialogue in this film. And with it being a approach to our main character who has 0 lines of dialogue in this film, and I gotta say, speaking on Joel Kinnaman as playing the lead character, I like him in action roles, some more than others, but he was very believable in the role. Like even though he wasn't like trained, I believe that he was able to learn the information in this certain amount of time. There is like a montage of him working out, him watching YouTube videos, this, that, and the other. So he was very believable in the role that he can handle himself. So I do like the believability of our main lead doing what he's able to do in this film for the most part. Now, that's where we transition into those are my goods. Now we're talking about the negatives, and I'm just going to be straight up honest with you all. This movie didn't work for me on a lot of different levels. First off, I appreciate a simple story, especially when you have seen as many action movies as I have. Like, let's just be honest with each other. And this goes for all genres, horror, action, comedy, superhero, you name it. There are a lot of similar stories that we've seen a million times, and I'm okay with that, but I do not like when they rely so heavily on tropes and stereotypes and they don't make them self-original. Like this film follows those scenarios and those tropes that we've seen 1,000 times to the book. There's no uniqueness about using a trope. The film just relies so much on every single thing you've seen, whether it's the criminals being Latino or Mexican or Asian, whether you have this drug dealer who has no personality, no character development. He has this cracked out girlfriend who has no point to the story, but all of a sudden has a pivotal part into the conclusion of the story. Like, there's just so many frustrating moments where I'm just like, okay, I can take the story. I've seen this before, but what's different about it? Nothing. There's no uniqueness. There's no originality at all in this movie. And it's just so many moments they made this so predictable and boring, which leads me into the pacing. I'm okay with a slow burn unless we get within those slow burns, build on the character. Give me some great acting. Give me some good performances, some meaty stuff within the world building. This film had none of that going on here. As we open with this action beat showing us how Joel lost his voice, and from that point on, it took about 45 to 50 minutes before we got our other action beat. And within that 45 to 50 minutes, they just bog it down with all this stuff that was so uninteresting. We have his relationship with his wife and what's going on there, him watching these YouTube videos to become the Punisher, to seeing this main guy who was the one that shot him, this main villain he's trying to get in the film. The film has him doing like some type of Robin Hood scene where he's like giving money to kids. And I'm like, what is the film trying to say about this villain? Like, are we supposed to sympathize with him? Are we supposed to not like him? Like, it was just a weird way that they handled the villain within that 45-minute period, which again, I know was meant to be character development, but it was just poorly executed in my opinion. And the film within those moments really try to have you buy into the tragedy of the situation. And of course, I don't want to see kids being shot for no reason. There's really no rhyme or reason why his son was shot. It's just he would happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. So of course, I felt bad for that. But the film, the way that they handle the dramatic approach to the story, there's these poorly edited scenes that are flashbacks that just feel forced, emotionless, and paint by numbers. And talking a little about the acting here, I talked about Joel being believable in the role, but I don't want to necessarily point fingers to anyone in particular in the cast. I thought collectively speaking, when it comes to this cast, I thought everyone was pretty underwhelming in their respective roles. If you're going to have this little to no dialogue for most of the film, and especially having your lead not speak at all, you need a very strong performance that can carry the load. And to me, all the performances were pretty bland, pretty generic, and just quite frankly, pretty flat in my opinion. But bringing it back a little bit to that action, which was the highlight of the film, I didn't like some of the use of the CGI, and I am a John Woo fan, like I've said before, and slow-mo. We get that in the film, but there wasn't his flair. It didn't have his style. Like, this just looked like inject any action director into this movie, because I didn't feel like this was a John Woo type of movie, because it lacked a lot of flair. It lacked a lot of personality that I like from his films. Like, you could have told me David Ayer directed this, because this looked like very much, if you all have ever seen David Ayer's last film, which I believe was The Tax Collector with Shia LaBeouf. I did not like that film. This looked like a sequel to that, which is not a good thing, because I wasn't a fan of that movie at all. So again, it just didn't have that John Woo that I was looking for. It was a very underwhelming movie for me. And if you guys couldn't tell, I wasn't the biggest fan. But before I give you my overall thoughts, give you my score, and let you know if it's worth checking out, I want to take this time to thank you all for making it to this point in the review. If you haven't already, consider hitting the like button, sharing your thoughts in the comments, and also consider sharing this video to anyone and everyone you know that might be interested in seeing Silent Night, but also consider subscribing to the channel. Overall, as a fan of this legendary director John Woo, it pains me to say this, but Silent Night is a bad movie. The script was awful, and it was overstuffed with every single scenario and stereotype and trope that you've seen in a revenge B-level action film. Now, there were some solid action sequences, like I mentioned, some car scenes that I liked, but it took forever for the film to get to those moments. I have no problems with a slow burn, but give me a good payoff. Give me some good acting, and this film had neither of that going on. It lacked the John Woo flair. There's some pretty bad performances throughout the film, and it tries to play into the emotions of the situation, and it uses these PowerPoint dreamlike sequences that were just terrible. This was John Woo's first American feature in 20 years, and it was a complete misfire and a huge disappointment for me. I'm going to give Silent Night a 2 out of 5. Now, this film will be available in theaters on December 1st. I've never been one to tell you all how to spend your money, and I will never be that person to do so. But I would say for me, there's not enough in this film to say that you have to rush out to see it. It doesn't really have that theater type of experience like opening weekend for me. Now, with that being said, I would say this is probably more of a stream it. If you're into John Woo, if you're into action, if you like Joel, you can stream it, and I think you'll probably enjoy it a little bit more than I did. But hey, that's just my opinion. I want to know yours in the comments below. Once you've seen it, what worked, what didn't work? What did you agree with me in my review? Did you disagree? Let's have some civil conversations in the comments about this film. Thank you all so much for watching today's review. Just a friendly reminder before we wrap it all up to consider liking, sharing your thoughts, sharing this video with all your friends, but also consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell. That way you can stay up to date with a lot of videos I have coming up this month. A lot of for your consideration movies, top 10 lists, so keep an eye out for all that. You all are awesome. Hope you're staying safe, and I'll catch you all on the next video.